Hello. I'm making some Copycat minestrone soup from Olive Garden. Oh my god. And Cappy decided to jump on my back. Say hello. Alright, so I'll show you a few things that you're gonna need. So you're gonna need a large stock pot and sort of a medium-sized one. And the reason I have this second one is because I like to make the pasta for this soup separately and store it separately. If you're gonna serve this the same day that you make it, you can actually put the pasta directly in the soup and don't need this. But if you're gonna make it for yourself, it does make a lot, so you'll have to store it. And I recommend doing the pasta separately and storing it separately because it disintegrates in the soup if you store it together. So that's why I'm doing it separately, because it's just me eating it and I'm gonna store them separately. Here are our ingredients. So we've got, on the produce side, garlic. I already have it minced. You can use an actual clove and mince it. Tender baby spinach. I have these shredded carrots. I like them shredded like this. You can actually cut them any way you want. We have a zucchini. We're gonna use 3 stalks of celery. We have some vegetable broth and a can of red kidney beans, a can of cannellini beans. We have petite diced tomatoes with basil, garlic, and oregano. We have a can of Italian green beans, and we have a small shell box. We're only gonna use half of this. And then I'm gonna get some spices out as well. I also forgot an onion before. We're gonna dice that. So these are the herbs and salt, oregano, some bay leaves, parsley, and basil. If you have Italian herb mix, that'll work. I like to use these, especially basil and parsley the most because those are my favorites. And then I have some utensils. And the first thing I'm gonna do is put some water in this and get that boiling for the pasta. So I have that water going for the pasta. Now I'm gonna start on the soup stock pot. I start with some oil, usually some olive oil. If you have avocado oil, that also works. So I'm gonna put some oil in the bottom, a couple of tablespoons. And I'm not gonna actually start the heat just yet because I wanna chop some vegetables first. So I'm gonna chop some vegetables and we'll go over that right now. I have washed these 3 stalks of celery and I actually did some peeling on the outside of the celery because sometimes this outer layer can be a little bit tough and I like it to be a little softer in my soup. So I'm just gonna start cutting, and I first cut off the ends, get those out of the way. And then for this soup, we can just dice it like this. When you get toward the bottom of the stalk, it can sometimes be pretty big, so you can cut that part in half if it's too big for a mouthful of soup for you. So I won't make you watch this entire part or I'll fast forward through it. So we've got celery done. Next thing I'm going to do is this onion. So I usually just take off the ends and I cut it in half and then peel off this first layer on the outside of each side. And I usually cut it into 4s depending on how big the onion is. For this one, I'm gonna dice it up a little smaller. So we're just gonna make a dice essentially of the onion. I don't want the pieces to be too big in the soup. So I'm just gonna dice it like, so the pieces are this big. And these are layers together that will actually come apart once I start cooking it and stirring it around and whatnot. So all this will come apart easy. As you can see, I'm not a professional chef or anything. And so usually I will start with the crunchier vegetables and get those cooking first. So I'll start with onion, celery, and then carrots. So we're gonna start the heat and put those in first. So we're gonna switch back over now to the pots. So we're at the pot, the bigger pot. And actually my water is boiling for my pasta, so I'm gonna actually put that in. Get that going. I'm gonna put a timer on it for the al dente. So this says 7 to 9 minutes. I will probably put it on 7 minutes. I'll just do the rest of this. So timer, 7 minutes. Get that stirred a little bit. And then this I'm gonna put on medium heat. There we go. Maybe medium low for now. And I'm gonna start by putting a handful of carrots in here. I like a lot of carrots. I'm gonna put maybe like a handful and a half. And I'll have the actual recipe with measurements in the description, but that you can see how I measure it out. So we start with that. Then I just walked over and got my cutting board with the celery and the onion. So we're gonna put that in as well. And then the next thing I usually do is I put in a pinch of salt and some pepper. Everybody likes pepper to different degrees. I like a lot of pepper. So if you like little, you could put little. It's up to you. You can see my cats in the background. The other thing I'm gonna do is start putting a little bit of seasoning in here. And you may have noticed that I waited to put garlic in here. A lot of people like to do garlic first. I don't, because it tends to burn. So I like to have crunchier vegetables just in here softening a little bit first. And then I'll put my garlic in so that it doesn't burn, because this has to cook for a little bit longer than the rest. So I'm just stirring everything around for the moment. So I have this on medium, and I'm just gonna keep an eye on it, make sure I stir it, things don't get burned. And if it seems too high, turn it down a little bit, that kind of stuff. And so I'm gonna start putting, like I said, some of these herbs in here. So I eyeball it, but again, I'll have some measurements. I just put some oregano, season the top. Same thing with parsley. I would say it's kind of 3/4 of a tablespoon each. And I put the most of basil because it's my favorite. And the Olive Garden flavor of soup has mostly basil as the flavor, I would say. So that's what I'm gonna do. So again, I'm gonna just stir it around a little bit. Everything is gonna cooking down. So this will take a little bit, and while this is cooking, I'm gonna go back over to the cutting board and cut the zucchini. So we're back over here at the cutting board. So I just cut the top and the bottom off of the zucchini. Depending on how long this is, you can cut it in half to make it a little easier to cut. So what I do is I cut it in half, and Olive Garden actually has slices like this in their soup. So you can slice it like this, but if you like more bite-sized chunks, you can cut it in half first and then slice it so it's in a quarter. And that's kind of what I like to do. So the zucchini doesn't take that long to cook, so it's one of those that I put in a little later, obviously. So I'm going to cut this up into quarters. It's already starting to smell good in here. So I got this all diced up, and we're gonna go back to the pot. So as you can see, our vegetables are starting to wilt down a little bit. If you want it to go a little faster, you can put a lid on the pot. That helps it to steam as this pot gets hot. So gotta be careful. I'm going to, my pasta's done, so let me go drain that, and I'll be right back. The pasta has been, I like to put it back in the pot, and if you leave it out for a while, it's gonna clump together. So what I like to do to prevent that is put a little bit of oil in here and stir it up, so that will prevent that from happening. And then same thing when you're storing it, it'll prevent it from being clumps. So that's ready to go when we're ready. And this has wilted down a good amount. So I'm going to start adding a few more things. So first of all, garlic. So I like a lot of garlic. So I'm going to do probably 2 teaspoons of garlic. You can do more or less on your taste. Sometimes I end up adding a little more. I'm part Italian, so kind of in my DNA. This pan's hot. That's gonna cook really fast. Let me get the zucchini and I'll put that in too. All right, so we put a couple more things in here. I'm gonna put a little more salt and pepper just to make sure the veggies are well seasoned. Stir it up. Zucchini doesn't take long to cook. So all of this stuff is gonna continue cooking while we're putting additional items in the soup. So So if it doesn't look completely ready when you're starting to add more stuff, don't worry. We're gonna boil this for a while. So, all right. So we put all of our fresh veggies in here, except for the spinach. The spinach is pretty much gonna go in last, so don't worry about that for now. We're gonna start working on some of these canned veggies now. So first thing I put in is the diced tomatoes. So I'm gonna open this one up. This one has a pull top, makes it nice and easy. You don't have to drain these. Just pull them right in, stir it up a little bit. It adds some juice, some broth into your veggies so everything stops sounding like it's burning. The other thing we're gonna add is the 2 cans of beans and half of this can of Italian green beans. So you're gonna wanna drain all 3 of those cans. And the other half of the green bean, you can, if you like a lot of green beans, you can put it in the soup, but it tends to be a lot if you use the whole can. So you can do with it what you will. So I'm gonna drain those. All right, and we are back. So I'm gonna do, like I said, half a can of these Italian green beans, this can of red kidney beans, drained, and cannellini. Or you can also do northern white beans or whatever they're called. Stir things around a little bit. It's gonna get a little bit tough because we have a lot of stuff in here. Now that we have a lot of stuff in here, we can add our vegetable broth. So I'm definitely gonna be adding this entire 32-ounce thing. Sometimes I add a little bit more, just depending on what it looks like, but let's add this and see what it looks like. So I like to shake my broth first, and then we open it up and pour it in. So this does provide a decent amount of broth, depending on what you like. If you like more broth in your soup, like me, you can add some more, or you can add water, that's fine too. But this is a sufficient amount of broth. I'm gonna add just a little bit more. All right, so I've added some more broth. Like I said, I like a little more in my soup, so it's a little less thick. Next thing we're gonna do is add 2 bay leaves. And these are gonna be boiling in here with the soup for about 20 minutes while everything cooks. I'm trying to get some bay leaves that are as whole as possible because we're gonna be taking these back out once the 20 minutes is up. So I'm just gonna put 1 in here. The other thing we're gonna do is add a handful of spinach, and it's gonna look like a lot. Do maybe a handful and a half, just depending on how much you like. Just make sure it gets into the soup. And this is gonna cook down, so it's not gonna look like this in 20 minutes or so while we have this cook. So we're just gonna let this simmer now for 20 minutes or so. Once it gets back to a boil, we'll count down 15 minutes maybe. So overall 20 minutes, and then it should be ready. It's done. Now I just need to let it cool. Put some of this in a bowl, put some of this. It's gonna be delicious.